Winter night in Montana. Wind whipped white across the landscape. Ethan Cole, single father, wrapped his 7-year-old daughter Lily in an old blanket. The pickup truck had broken down in the middle of a snow-covered mountain pass. Temperature negative, 15 degrees Celsius. He trembled, searching for a phone signal. Nothing. "Daddy, I'm cold." "I know. We're going to be okay, Lily." He pulled her into his arms, their breath misting in the freezing air. His eyes began to blur. Then his daughter's voice rang out, trembling but clear. "Daddy, that's Mom." He opened his eyes. Through the curtain of snow, a figure approached, holding a flashlight, calling his name in a voice he thought he'd never hear again. Ethan Cole, 38 years old, former rescue soldier, now a long-haul delivery driver. Lily, 7 years old, gentle, loved to draw. Clara, 35 years old, doctor, ex-wife, left after losing their firstborn son. 3 years ago, Clara left after the tragedy of losing their newborn baby boy. Ethan, unable to bear the emptiness, left the city and lived with Lily in the mountains. He didn't blame his wife. He believed she needed time to heal, but she never came back. That winter, Ethan decided to drive through the mountain pass to make a Christmas delivery, earning money to buy gifts for his daughter. Heavy snow and wind, radio cutting in and out, Lily dozing in the passenger seat. The truck's wheels slipped, careening off the road, stuck in a field of white snow. Engine dead, battery dying, temperature dropping rapidly. Ethan took off his coat and wrapped it around his daughter. "I'm fine. You just need to stay warm." He rubbed his hands together, his breath visible like smoke in the air. In that moment of fading consciousness, he thought, if this is the end, at least she's sleeping in my arms. The truck had been their home for the past 2 days. They'd been traveling from town to town, Ethan taking whatever delivery jobs he could find to make ends meet. Christmas was coming, and he'd promised Lily something special this year. A real gift, not just something handmade. She wanted art supplies, good ones. The kind her teacher said she had talent for, colored pencils that didn't break, paper that didn't tear, a sketchbook with thick pages. It seemed like such a small thing, but to Ethan, it represented everything. Proof that even though they'd lost so much, they could still have moments of joy. They could still celebrate. They could still hope. The storm had come out of nowhere. One moment the road was clear. The next, visibility dropped to nearly zero. He'd tried to turn back, but the truck had other plans. The old engine, which he'd been meaning to fix for months, finally gave up. Now they sat in the growing cold, the heater useless without power, the windows starting to frost over from the inside. Ethan had tried everything. He'd attempted to restart the engine a dozen times. He'd checked under the hood, his hands going numb within seconds. He'd tried the radio, the emergency beacon, his cell phone. Nothing worked. They were too far from any town, too deep in the pass, and the storm was getting worse. He looked at Lily, still bundled in his coat and the blanket. Her face was pale but peaceful. She trusted him completely. She always had. Even after her mother left, even after they'd lost their home and ended up living out of this truck half the time, she never complained. She never lost faith in him. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered, pulling her closer. "I'm so sorry." His own body was shutting down. He could feel it. The cold creeping in from his fingers and toes, moving inward, his thoughts getting slower, hazier. He knew what was happening. Hypothermia. He'd seen it during his military days, during rescue missions. The irony wasn't lost on him. The rescuer, unable to rescue himself. He thought about Clara, wondered where she was, if she ever thought about them, if she knew how much Lily looked like her, talked like her, drew like her, if she regretted leaving. He'd written her letters in those first few months, long ones, explaining everything, how Lily was growing, how he didn't blame her, how he'd wait for her. He never sent them. What was the point? She'd made her choice. But now, sitting in this frozen metal tomb with their daughter, he wished he'd tried harder. Wished he'd fought for her instead of letting her go. Wished he'd... Daddy. Lily's small voice cut through his thoughts. Someone's out there. He forced his eyes open, squinting through the frosted windshield. At first he saw nothing, just white, endless white. Then a light, faint at first, then stronger, moving toward them through the blizzard. "It's probably just a tree or," he started to say. "No, Daddy." Lily sat up straighter, her hand pressing against the cold glass. "I hear her, I hear Mom." Ethan's heart stopped, then started again, pounding. "Lily, honey, your mom isn't." But even as he said it, the light was getting closer. And through the howling wind, he heard it, a voice calling their names. "Ethan, Lily!" He knew that voice. He'd know it anywhere, even after 3 years of silence. A local resident later said, "I saw that truck with its lights on in the middle of the snow like someone was trying to keep something from going out." As he was fading, Ethan heard Lily's weak voice. "Dad, someone's out there." He opened his eyes, looking blurry through the window, seeing a faint beam of light moving through the snow. "Must be a hallucination," Lily whispered. "No, I hear her. Mom's voice." His heart clenched. He pushed open the door. Wind hit his face like knives. A figure was approaching, holding a flashlight, wearing a dark blue medical coat. A woman's voice rang out. "Ethan! Lily!" He froze. "Clara!" She rushed to them, kneeling, pressing her hand to his face. "Thank God! I've been looking for you both." "How did you know?" "The news reported a past collapse. I recognized your license plate on the list." She set up an emergency tent, lit flares to call for rescue, wrapped Lily in blankets to keep her warm. Ethan trembled, smiling faintly. "I thought I'd never see you again." "I thought the same, until I heard her calling." In the red glow of the flares, she placed her hand on his chest, where his heart beat weakly but steadily. "And you? I never stopped believing you'd come back one day." But there was more to the story. Clara had been working at a small clinic 40 miles away when the storm warnings came through. She monitored the reports obsessively, like she did every winter, tracking weather patterns in areas where she knew Ethan might be working. She'd never stopped tracking him, never stopped knowing where he was, what routes he took, what jobs he worked. From a distance, always from a distance, because she couldn't bear to face what she'd left behind, but couldn't fully let go either. When she saw his truck's plate number on the stranded vehicles list, her blood went cold. She'd grabbed her emergency medical kit, borrowed a snowmobile from a neighbor, and headed into the storm without a second thought. The rescue coordinator had tried to stop her. "Ma'am, it's too dangerous. Professional teams are on their way." "That's my family out there," she'd said. The first time she'd used that word in 3 years. Family. She'd driven through conditions that would have killed most people, used skills from her years in emergency medicine, navigation training from when she and Ethan were young and adventurous, and pure stubborn determination. When she finally spotted the truck's dim taillights, barely visible through the snow, she'd felt her heart restart after 3 years of barely beating. Now, wrapping them in thermal blankets, administering emergency warming packs, she worked with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, but her hands shook, her breath caught. This wasn't just another patient, this was everything. "Lily, sweetheart, can you hear me?" she asked, checking the little girl's pupils with a pen light. "Mama?" Lily's voice was small, confused, like she was waking from a dream. "Yes, baby, Mama's here. I knew you'd come. I told Daddy you would." Clara's tears froze on her face almost instantly. "I'm so sorry I took so long." Ethan watched them, his mind struggling to process. Pain, cold, shock, and now this. Clara, here, saving them. "Why didn't you come before?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Because I was a coward. Because I thought you'd be better off without me. Because I couldn't face." She stopped, focusing on wrapping another blanket around Lily. "We'll talk later. Right now, I need to keep you both alive." The rescue team arrived 20 minutes later, helicopters fighting through the storm. But by then, Clara had already stabilized them both, her medical training taking over where her emotions threatened to overwhelm. As they loaded Ethan and Lily onto stretchers, the lead paramedic looked at Clara with respect. "You saved their lives. Another hour and—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Clara climbed into the helicopter with them, refusing to be separated. She held Lily's hand on one side, Ethan's on the other. Through the noise of the rotors and the howling wind, Ethan leaned close to her. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. This is my fault. If I hadn't left, if I'd been there, you wouldn't have been out here alone. We were always going to end up here, some way or another. Maybe this is where we needed to be, to find each other again." Clara squeezed his hand tighter. "I never stopped loving you. I want you to know that. I never stopped. I was just so broken, I didn't know how to stay. I know. I always knew." The rescue worker later recounted, "When we arrived, she was still holding his hand. They were both freezing, but they were smiling." After being rescued, they were taken to a small nearby hospital. Ethan woke up to find Clara with her head resting on the bed beside him. "You're alive. Thanks to you this time." "No, thanks to our daughter. She called for Mom before I heard you." Clara smiled, tears falling. "You never blamed me, did you?" "I only blame myself for letting you leave alone." She told him that after she left, she transferred to work in cold regions, unable to bear seeing children in the hospital, until one day she realized running away wouldn't heal the pain. "I came to where you lived, just to watch from afar, but I didn't have the courage to knock on the door." Ethan looked at her, his voice hoarse. "Now you can knock." She smiled through tears. But the conversation went deeper than either expected. "I saw you," she admitted. 3 months ago, you and Lily at the farmer's market. She was wearing that purple jacket, the one with the butterfly on the back. You were buying her an ice cream cone, even though it was October and cold." Ethan's eyes widened. "You were there?" "I've been there a lot. At her school concerts, sitting in the back, at the park when you took her on Sundays. I'd watch from across the street. I told myself I was checking to make sure you were both okay. But really, I was just too afraid to face you. Why didn't you come over? Why didn't you say something?" "Because what right did I have? I left you alone with a newborn to grieve for. I abandoned my family when they needed me most. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, I was too broken to stay, but I'd like to come back now that you figured it out without me?" "Yes, exactly that. That's exactly what you should have said." Clara wiped her eyes. "I thought you'd hate me." "I could never hate you. I just missed you. Every single day, I missed you." Lily ran in, hugging them both. "Mom's here now." The whole room went quiet. Clara knelt down. "Lily, can you forgive me?" "You're not wrong. I was just waiting for you to come home." Ethan looked at them both, his eyes unusually warm. The days that followed were delicate. Clara stayed at the hospital, officially to monitor their recovery, unofficially because she couldn't bring herself to leave again. They talked, really talked. For the first time in 3 years, they stopped running from the pain and sat with it. "When we lost him," Ethan said one night, "I didn't know how to help you. I was drowning too, but I thought I had to be strong for you, so I buried everything. And you thought you had to handle it alone. We both suffered separately when we should have suffered together." "I blame myself," Clara whispered. "Every day. I thought if I'd done something different, eaten better, rested more, checked in sooner, maybe. It wasn't your fault. The doctor said so. It happened. And we never talked about it because we were both too afraid of breaking each other more. I broke us by leaving. No, we were already broken. You just left the pieces behind for me to figure out. And I let you go because I thought that's what you needed. What I needed was you, fighting for me, coming after me, refusing to let me self-destruct alone. I know that now." Christmas Eve came while they were still in the hospital. The nurses decorated their room with tinsel and a small tree. Claire and Ethan sat side by side on his hospital bed, Lily between them, watching snow fall outside the window. "I want to come home," Clara said quietly. "Not just for Christmas, for good, if you'll have me." Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at Lily, who was drawing a picture of 3 people holding hands. "What do you think, Lily Bug?" Should Mom come home? Lily looked up with those serious 7-year-old eyes. She never left. She was just lost. Now she's found. Oh, that's how it works in stories. And you think our life is a story? Everything's a story, Daddy. You told me that. Ethan smiled, then looked at Clara. You heard the boss. You're coming home. Clara broke down. Really broke down, for the first time since their son died. Ethan held her while she sobbed, years of grief and guilt and loneliness pouring out in great heaving gasps. Lily climbed into her lap and patted her back. It's okay, Mama. Crying means you're healing. Daddy told me that too. Your dad's very smart. I know. He's the smartest daddy ever, and you're the bravest, Mama. I'm not brave. I ran away. But you came back. That's the brave part. Later, when Lily was asleep between them, Clara and Ethan sat in the quiet darkness. I'm scared, Clara admitted. What if I mess this up again? What if I can't handle it? Then we'll mess it up together, and we'll figure it out together. That's the deal. No more running. No more handling things alone. Promise? Promise. She placed an old family photo on the nightstand, the one taken before she left. I want to start over if you'll still allow it. We don't need to start over, we just continue. Outside the window, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in fresh white. Inside, 3 people held each other close. A family reformed not because the past was forgotten, but because it was finally, truly acknowledged. Real person marker. The head nurse later said, when they hugged each other, I saw his hands were still cracked from the cold, but he didn't let go. People call it a Christmas miracle, but I think it's just love that knows how to wait. A few months later, Clara moved back to the small house in Montana. Ethan repaired the roof, Clara planted trees in front of the porch, Lily painted the door. Every morning they ate breakfast together, then Ethan drove Lily to school. Neighbors said, they don't talk much, they just smile more. One day late snow fell. Lily stuck the season's first snowflake on a wooden sign carved with words, family found again. Clara asked, I used to think I'd lost everything. Ethan replied, no, we were just temporarily lost. She rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for not locking the door. He gently squeezed her hand. I just kept the house warm, waiting for you to come home. The house transformation happened slowly, not a renovation, but a restoration. They didn't try to erase the years Clara had been gone. Instead, they built around them. In the living room, Ethan had kept all of Lily's artwork from the years Clara missed. He'd framed them, dated them, created a timeline of their daughter's childhood. Clara spent hours looking at each one, tears streaming down her face as she saw all the moments she'd missed. I can't get these back, she said. No, but you can be here for all the ones coming next. They established new routines, breakfast together every morning, no exceptions. Dinner as a family every night, even if it was just sandwiches. Bedtime stories where they took turns reading to Lily, even though she could read herself now. Clara started working at the local clinic 3 days a week. The other 4 days, she was home with Lily, making up for lost time. They painted together, baked together, just existed together. Ethan watched them with a fullness in his chest he'd forgotten was possible. His girls, both of them, finally home. One evening they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Lily was inside doing homework. Do you ever think about him? Clara asked quietly. Their son. The baby they'd lost. The grief that had torn them apart. Every day. He'd be 3 now. Would have been Lily's little brother. I'm sorry I couldn't handle it. I'm sorry I left you to grieve alone. We both handled it wrong. But maybe that's okay. Maybe there's no right way to survive something like that. I used to think the pain would kill me. Then I realized I was already dead inside, just still walking around. And now I feel alive again. It still hurts. God, it still hurts so much. But it's different. It's a pain I can live with because I'm not carrying it alone anymore. Ethan pulled her close. You'll never carry anything alone again. That's my promise. Spring turned to summer. They planted a garden. Clara's medical skills came in handy when Lily fell and scraped her knee. Ethan's mechanical skills fixed the perpetually broken fence. They weren't perfect. They fought sometimes. Clara had nightmares. Ethan had moments of resentment for the years he'd struggled alone, but they worked through it. They talked. They didn't run. One night, 6 months after Clara came home, Lily presented them with a drawing. It showed 3 people holding hands. But there was a 4th figure too, smaller, more translucent, floating above them with angel wings. "That's our family," Lily said. "All of us, the ones here and the one watching." Clara and Ethan looked at each other, tears in their eyes. Their son. Lily had never met him, but she knew about him. Knew he was part of their story, and she'd included him in their family portrait. "It's perfect," Clara whispered. "We're all here," Lily said simply. "That's what makes it perfect. From this day forward, I choose to look at each other a little longer. I will live with kindness." 1 year later, they celebrated Christmas in the house filled with golden lights. Lily hung the old wooden sign on the tree. "Mom, can I write 2 more words?" "What is it, honey?" The little girl wrote slowly, "Welcome home." Clara's voice caught, hugging her daughter. Ethan looked at them, smiling. Now this house is truly complete. They went outside together. Snow fell gently, light reflecting on the frozen lake. She said, "I used to think snow was the coldest thing in the world." He replied, "Only when you stand alone." She nodded. "Now it's beautiful." But the story didn't end with that one Christmas. It continued through years of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were together. Lily's 8th birthday, where Clara baked a cake from scratch and only burned it a little. Ethan's promotion to supervisor at the logistics company, a desk job that meant fewer dangerous mountain passes. Clara's nomination for Community Healthcare Worker of the Year, recognition for the free clinic she'd started for families who couldn't afford care. They adopted a dog, a scruffy mutt from the shelter that Lily named Snowflake because she saved us in the snow, and now we're saving her. Every year, on the anniversary of that night in the blizzard, they drove back to that spot, not to relive the trauma, but to remember the miracle. They'd leave flowers, say a prayer, and thank whatever force in the universe had brought them back together. "We could have died that night," Ethan said on the 5th anniversary. "But we didn't. We got saved. We got a second chance. Not just us. Our whole family got a second chance." Lily, now 12 years old and growing into a beautiful young woman who looked more like her mother every day, stood with them at the memorial spot. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The years apart?" Clara and Ethan looked at each other. "Every day," Clara said honestly. "But I also know that sometimes people need to fall apart before they can come back together stronger." "We're stronger now," Ethan agreed, "because we've been through the worst and survived. Together." Years later, when Lily went off to college to study art and medicine, a combination of both her parents' talents and passions, Clara and Ethan sat on their porch. The house was quiet without her, but it wasn't the terrible silence of grief. It was the peaceful quiet of a life well lived. "We did it," Clara said. "We raised an incredible human. We did. Even with all the mess, all the mistakes, all the pain, we did it. Would you change anything? If you could go back?" Ethan thought about it. "I'd change losing our son. I'd change you leaving. But I wouldn't change us finding our way back to each other. That journey, as painful as it was, made us who we are now. Who we are is better than who we were. Much better." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the snow fall gently over their mountain home. The house that had once held only memories now held life, laughter, love. And on the mantel, beside photos of Lily growing up, sat a small frame with a single ultrasound image. Their son, gone but never forgotten, forever part of their story. If you believe stories of healing like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to HA Stories. We tell stories that should never be forgotten.